Obviously, all these presented here are facing us now with an important dilemma, and I would say in the same time with a great choice that lays ahead us. Yet this choice is not visible if we don't consider the human dimension of this case. And the human dimensions was sketched and was put forward in these testimonies, but as a direct participant to this, as a student of Mr. Bivolaru, as a yoga teacher, as an educated scientist, I can tell that the human dimension of this case is unguessed by most of the people, and constitutes, in a way, the reason why it is such an important dilemma. I will aim to put it from the perspective of this forum to make it in a way more visible. First, one important reminder: institutional construction have to serve the citizen and not the other way around. Now, of course, the dilemma is, are we choosing to protect the individual or to protect the institution for the sake of the dream that lays behind it? Now, this asylum case of Mr. Bivolaru, beside the technicalities that the lawyers are putting forward, is raising the dilemma into the public domain now. And of course, some are saying, well, it goes into the political domain. I would have a stop into the public domain first, which is the purpose of this meeting, as far as I understood. Mr. Bivolaru was a victim of the communist system in Romania, as officially admitted even by the modern time authorities, so to speak, in 2011. But he was also a victim of judiciary errors, to call the list what happened with him, in the EU member state Romania. He is enjoying, as you see, asylum in Sweden, and this is represented in a way a ray of hope for the citizens of the European family. This also is somehow a case that is giving the possibility to normality, to a normal transition from deeply totalitarian regime, which was engulfing Romania for so many years, to a real democracy. And we all know, and we have been there, all the people in Europe, that a date like December 1989 cannot define a transformation, a deep transformation in society. Maybe it defines the beginning of a deep transformation, as well as our maturity doesn't start when our ID card is released by the authorities as individuals. Now, cancelling this fundamental right, in our opinion, to put things in perspective, represents not only a very bad message to the citizens of Europe, but it shows that things are going backward. We built something, but we built it from the top down, which is not really possible. Now, if a person, as Mr. Bivolaru, has been actively serving the public, he's an author of over 40 books, over 200 articles, conferences, public conferences. He's the author of the most comprehensive yoga system of study that exists today on this planet, and I speak this as doing research over 15 years in this domain. If a person like that cannot be protected against abuses, judicial errors, or persecutions, now, of course, the whole construction that we put on top of this becomes doubtful. So we should be very careful what we bury in the rubbles of this European construction. Gregorian Bivolaru was sentenced in June this year after a bizarre trial with, in my opinion, Kafkian accents, a trial that lasted for over 10 years. Now, during time, accusations where you see police was working hand in hand with the media. The police worker is filming, and 3 hours later is broadcast on the media, even the rough cut from the police. And if you don't call that cooperation, I don't know anyone who cooperates tighter than this, in a state where institutions should be independent, at least on the paper. They don't care to show independency even on the paper. So during this time, accusations were building up with unprecedented seriousness. Now, drug dealing appeared very often, human trafficking, weapon dealing, and it went all the way to accusations of human sacrifices. Now, of course, if we talk about the Aztec Empire, we might, or the reminiscence of those people, we might have a history, but in Romania of 2000, it's a little bit bizarre. All these vanished in time one by one, as also pointed by the fact-finding mission of Mr. Villefort. Nothing remained, and all they were proven as media stunts. And this term is not labeled by me, it was labeled by other researchers in the domain. They were media stunts done by an authority that still cannot make the difference between rights and responsibility when it comes to exerting power, as Romanian authorities obviously need to learn. In the end, the Romanian state forced a sentence upon Mr. Bivolaru with the price of destroying the life of the one they hypocritically and noisily claim to defend. You have here the entire story. This DVD is a rough cut of an interview with the victim, the alleged victim of Mr. Bivolaru, who for 10 years is screaming for justice for her own case, because in reality she's the victim of the authorities. And she's claiming that, she's demonstrating that, the lawyers demonstrate that, and yet we have only one person sentenced there, and this is Mr. Bivolaru. This is the reason why I said that the sentence was forced upon him. With such a sentence given, Romania is not affecting only one person, but all those who are studying with Mr. Bivolaru, who were trying to defend him, who were practicing yoga under his coordination. Challenging the protection of Mr. Bivolaru within European Union, challenging the asylum, is practically throwing hundreds of thousands of people onto a very dangerous path of harassment in front of the media and in front of the society. And I'm not talking here about a potential danger, it's demonstrated while we're talking. I'm coming now from Denmark, and in Denmark, the yoga school who had been founded by a student of Mr. Bivolaru in 1990 is facing exactly the same process of mediabolization as in Romania, of course, with keeping the proportions of a far more democratic system, but still exactly the same patterns, proving, I can tell as a scientist, proving that is within the system where the error is, since everywhere different understandings and different cultures present the same patterns of reaction. So what is happening by challenging this asylum is that same things are copied, identical then from a media to another media. We just faced a media campaign in Denmark that was presenting copy-paste from the Romanian media, same accusations with no discernment. It's true, later on they apologized, some of them, but what is the damage to be measured after you've been throwing the arrow? This part was already proven, and now we're facing extension of the labeling of the yoga practitioners, and therefore the human rights dimension of the case is extending while we're speaking. There are currently 21 yoga teachers that are facing charges of human trafficking in another file that was quickly built up by the Romanian authorities in their desperate effort to cover their tracks of the first file where they already have been proven so wrong. Now, in yogic terms, this voluntary work is called karma yoga. It's a well-known practice worldwide. Romania is now prosecuting 21 yoga teachers for practicing a millenary yoga system. Now, of course, with a sentence forced upon him, with an arrest warrant that is challenging the asylum status given by Sweden in 2007 for exactly the same file, Gregorian Bivolaru is not allowed to travel. He is not able to join any public meetings, such as this one, to speak for himself, to meet his students worldwide, or to come back to his native country. He has to flee, he left everything there and search for justice. Now he's living as a fugitive. He received threats in his official address. The Swedish police is having under investigation a lot of threat letters, a lot of accusations. His car was attacked by unknown people. Now, in all this time, the institutions that were supposed to help in this, they're serving as a tool in the hands of groups of interest that were shown partially in these exposures here. As a principle, the asylum institution is to be carefully protected, since it is the last hope one have in this always unbalanced confrontation between the individual and the state. It's somehow the last frontier. Now, generally, we see today what we say, it is an alarming rise of a certain type of rhetoric from the side of the state. And I'm referring here to the fact that in many cases today, we hear the request that the citizen should blindly trust the state. Meanwhile, or the institutions, to put it more accurate. Meanwhile, the institutions of the state tend to drastically reduce the feedback system. Of course, this feedback system are the fail-safe mechanism that are protecting the citizen. So practically, we are told to trust the institution while the institution discreetly removing most of the feedback system. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the time of accepted casualties is on the paper obsolete. We cannot go for that anymore, at least in theory. There is no measure in human lives anymore. We cannot say if it is less than 100 victims, we can accept this kind of casualties for a greater dream. That is an obsolete theory, in theory. Because in practice, I dare to say that even at the European level, and I've been involved in different forums since 2005, we see what I call the model of institutionalized perfection. Certain rights and liberties cannot be by definition broken by the state. So they say, all states, as was also stated today, all states in European Union are, in theory, safe states. They cannot be wrong in or do wrongdoings against their citizens. But the case of the yoga teacher Gregorian Bivolaru is exactly proving that eliminating the fail-safe mechanisms in modern Europe is premature. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's premature. We leave the kids playing with dangerous buttons. They're not yet mature enough. The Swedish Supreme Court was granting Mr. Bivolaru asylum in 2007 for reasons that were exposed here. Now, a multi-level judiciary system is in force in all the countries in Europe. And the multi-level judiciary system has the purpose to protect the citizen against errors. If you are not happy with the decision of the court, you can go to a higher court, you have a second chance, or even a third chance. Now, this was the very foundation of such a system. It was imbued the citizen and not the state. In Romania, in the communist Romania, we still have such formality. Of course, the state was always right there. It was a perfect institution, by the way. But today, you can challenge the decisions. Now, in the case of Mr. Bivolaru, the state was proving going backward. The first court acquitted him, the second court confirmed and stand firm that he is not guilty, and suddenly the Supreme Court is denying all the decisions and take a decision upside down in a trial that I dare to say it was breaking all possible judiciary terms, except breaking blatantly the law. Maybe they did it, but I'm not expert in that, so I don't want to. I know only one thing about the last phase of the court in Romania in this recent case. One of the judges, of the 3 judges in the Supreme Court, was unlawfully appointed. Well, if that is acceptable, then of course we are talking about an extremely tribal kind of system. So, of course, the course of actions in this case is theoretically within the frame of the law, but it shows the fact that Mr. Bivolaru's case, it is indeed, as Mr. Andreescu put it, a test of the democratic institutions of European Union. And the human rights dimension, the message that is given to the citizens, risk to be extremely negative. For, as I was showing here, if we throw hundreds of thousands of people just in front of the unleashed media, who is hungry for sensationalism, then of course I'm wondering what's the point in building all these institutions in the first hand, if not for us, for all of us, where everyone will find a certain place. So the call that our yoga school, and also the call that Mr. Bivolaru is making to all the responsible forums of Europe today, is to seriously, maturely consider the facts, to consider from a broad perspective all the implications of this case, and not to dismiss superficially based on political interests and some short-sighted goals that will prove to be catastrophic in a long run. And theoretically everybody goes into this journey of constructing a Europe for a quite long run. That was the point.
Thank you very much.
Lorena Feruță from the Permanent Mission of Romania. I was also in the plenary hall. I would like to highlight, I think for the third time, that in our opinion, the process, the trial of Mr. Bivolaru has nothing to do with the communist regime and with Ceausescu persecutions. So it's something totally different. The trial expressed very clear, the sentences expressed very clear that Mr. Bivolaru had relationships with a minor, and he had been condemned to 6 years of prison, as you know. And concerning what you say before, that in the first and the second process he was declared innocent, I think that everywhere in movies or in real life we have this procedure. So they are the rules of the game. You know, you can try several times, and the Supreme Court has the last word. So if the Supreme Court said that he is guilty, you cannot take into the consideration the others' trials and what happened before. So it's, after me, it's very clear. We have a sentence, and it's, I cannot say that they are influenced in Romania in this case from the juridic aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and for coming with this contribution. And we are aware, as you have mentioned also in the working sessions, that there is a sentence, a conviction from the Romanian Supreme Court. We of course stress that exactly that is the problem. Because if you put it next to the decision of the Swedish Supreme Court, you find that within Europe, within the European Union, we have a problem where two Supreme Courts come to two very different conclusions regarding this case. And furthermore, we have different experts on human rights and law that are leaning towards giving the Swedish decision their support and continuously criticizing the Romanian support, also the case. And we it's not the time now when we have went through the critique of the trial as such, but one of the things, of course, is that Mr. Bivolaru was never heard, because the judge of the Romanian Supreme Court didn't want to wait for the Swedish authorities to make the rogatory commission under fair conditions in Sweden. So there had been again and again critique of the Romanian decision, but never of the Swedish decision, and that's why we raised this. What is happening in a Europe where two Supreme Courts take two very different decisions? But thank you very much for your comment, and I'm sorry that I didn't see.
Sorry, I forgot to say something. It's up to every adult to take part to something which is legal. So far I know they have no problem to exercise their thoughts and everything they want to do in Romania. So I like to separate a little bit the case from Mr. Bivolaru with MISA aspects, because they are free, the members are free to exercise their liberties.
Thank you. And this is of course correct from a formal perspective, but on the other hand we have again and again the documentation of the stigmatizations of those who are members of this group.
Well, first I think the intervention from Romania is very good as an example of arrogance of power, and the fact that the old mentality, forgetting who pays you, your salary, is kind of symptomatic here. Of course, we still are away. We have to go quite a long way to realize that the institution has to serve the people. And if so many thousands of people say, hey, this is wrong what you're doing with us, not with others, but with us, then of course something has to be done. You saw an excerpt of that media program. My colleagues were counting since 1990 over 12,500 media broadcasts, not so acid like that one, but the quantity beats every other subject in Romania after 1989 by far. Now maybe today we have all kind of very popular subjects also rising, also due to the misunderstanding of institutions who they serve in reality. And in a way, probably because people as such don't have an identity yet in front of the state has a very strong brand in front of the people. So for this reason, I cannot disagree more with the fact that the legal frame is the only frame in which the social life is taking place. Yes, MISA don't have legally some problems, but we do have a lot of problems to exist, and I'm speaking on the behalf of many thousands, tens of thousands of practitioners who are losing jobs, stigmatized by the society, and marginalized concretely. We have over 600 cases documented of people whose life was severely affected, and when I say severely, we say losing jobs, family problems of severe cases. Even we have Mr. Andreescu was investigating a case of forced medication in psychiatric hospital by a person who didn't want to quit the yoga practice. These are results of an incompetent state, first of all, who doesn't know how to listen those who the state was supposed to serve. Because it's not, the state cannot say citizens are crazy, or at least this part of the citizens are crazy. You are there to deal with everyone's problems. That's why you are paid, as far as we understood from this wonderful dream that we call democracy. So for this reason, an argument such as, look, we did our job, we make a law, you are falling between the lines there, it's your problem. It is an argument that, in my view, is giving this arrogance of power. You get the power, you don't care how the others are hurt by it or whatever. You just make sure that you have a legal paper signed by someone to conclude your actions, and for this reason you are safe. In my opinion, that's far from being enough. And time again, the evidences are showing that practitioners of yoga in Misa in Romania, they are suffering persecution by this hand-in-hand work from the state with the media and all these institutions. I'm not saying that people in the institutions are thinking in the same way, but the fact is the result hurts, and that should be the concern of the people in that institution, not how they look from outside.
Thank you for this.